Welcome back to Sip and Talk. Grab your drink, settle in. I got my coffee right here, definitely needed for today.
Definitely. Hi, everyone. I'm ready too. It feels like, there's so much noise out there, so many headlines.
Exactly. It's hard to know what really matters, what's actually going on beneath the surface.
Right. And that's kind of what we try to do here, isn't it? Connect the dots, get a bit deeper than the usual sound bites.
Totally. And today we're diving into something, well, pretty fundamental. It touches on a country's economy, its people's daily lives, their basic stability.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about unpaid wages, a huge issue, and this whole concept of stability maintenance in what's often called New China.
New China. It sounds, I don't know, maybe a bit academic, but we'll break it down.
We will. Stick with us. We'll unpack what that term New China actually means in practice, why these wage issues are cropping up so much right now, and, what it tells us about how societies, especially one structured like China's, handle big economic shifts and, public feelings.
Yeah, it's this whole interplay, isn't it, between the government, the economy, the promises made, and then just people trying to get by.
Exactly. It's fascinating, actually, and really important to understand.
We're going to try and make it super clear, hopefully give you a few of those aha moments. So let's get into it. Okay, first things first. This term, New China. What are we actually talking about when we use that phrase? Because, for a lot of us, it just sounds like, China.
That's a really crucial starting point, because it's not just another name. New China is the official term the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, uses for the People's Republic of China, the PRC.
Okay.
And it was established in 1949. But the key thing is how it was established. It wasn't just, a change of government.
Right. It wasn't like an election or something.
Not at all. It came after a really brutal civil war.
Yeah.
The CCP defeated the Nationalist Party, the Kuomintang, or KMT, and basically replaced the Republic of China, which was the government before them.
So a complete upheaval.
A fundamental shift. Yeah. Politically, ideologically, socially, it was like they were trying to rewrite the entire national operating system, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Like starting a completely different book, not just a new chapter. So what are the core things that make this New China so different? Different from what came before, or different from, say, Western countries?
No, the differences are pretty stark, especially compared to, liberal democracies. The absolute number one thing is the political system. It's one-party rule, period. Meaning
the CCP is in charge of everything.
Everything. They control the entire state apparatus. When they say the party leads everything, they mean it literally. It's not like, one party is dominant, but there are others.
No opposition allowed, basically.
No real opposition. No genuine multi-party system. No independent courts to challenge the party. No real freedom of the press. No competitive elections as we'd understand them. This control goes deep into every layer of society. Party cells are everywhere.
Wow. So the party's will is basically law.
Effectively, yes. Legally and practically. And that flows from their core ideology, which is officially Marxism with Chinese characteristics.
Which sounds complicated.
It is and it isn't. It's rooted in Marxism-Leninism, but adapted. They talk about a people's democratic dictatorship.
Yeah.
Which sounds contradictory, right?
Yeah, democratic dictatorship.
In practice, the dictatorship part is aimed at anyone seen as challenging the party's rule. It's a very centralized authoritarian system. And they claim they found this unique Chinese path, different from the West.
Okay, so they're setting themselves apart ideologically.
And that narrative is crucial for them. It justifies their rule at home, and it's how they position themselves on the world stage. It's the story of exceptionalism.
If they're defining the present and future like that, I guess controlling the past is also super important.
Oh, absolutely essential. That's the third key feature. Historical narrative replacement.
What does that mean in practice?
It means the history of the nationalists, the Republic of China, before 1949, it's basically pushed aside. It's downplayed, criticized, or just ignored in schools and public memory.
So they create their own version of history.
Exactly. A carefully crafted narrative. Mao Zedong is the great founder who liberated China. Deng Xiaoping is the reformer who brought prosperity. And now, Xi Jinping is leading this national rejuvenation, bringing China back to global greatness.
Its history is a political tool.
Completely. It's about legitimizing the party now by controlling how people understand the past. Control the memory, control the future kind of thing.
Okay, so you've got the one-party system, the specific ideology that controlled history. What about the legal side? Do they have a constitution?
They do, yeah. And this is a really interesting point. The gap between the constitutional text and the reality.
How so?
If you just read the PRC Constitution, parts of it might sound pretty good. It mentions citizen rights, rule of law, stuff like that. It might look like a modern framework on paper. But in reality, the Constitution is interpreted and implemented by the CCP. There are no real external checks and balances, no independent judiciary that can rule against the party based on the Constitution.
So the party is essentially above the Constitution.
That's the practical reality. The Constitution guides how the party governs, maybe, but it doesn't restrain the party's power in any fundamental way. If your rights are violated by a party decision appealing to the Constitution, well, good luck with that.
That's a huge difference from systems where the Constitution is the ultimate authority.
Massive difference. And when you put all that together, the one-party rule, the ideology, the controlled history, the subservient Constitution, it leads to the final point, the status of the citizen.
How are citizens viewed within this system?
Less as individuals with inherent rights who can challenge the state, and more as, well, the term sometimes used is managed subject.
Managed subjects.
Yeah. Political rights are very limited. It's not like the idea of individual liberty or freedom of speech being fundamental. Your rights are often seen as conditional, granted by the party, and easily restricted if you step out of line. The focus is on contributing to the collective, as defined by the party, not on individual political expression.
So, okay, it's crystal clear now. New China isn't just a label. It signifies a fundamentally different system, top to bottom.
Exactly. Different way of organizing society, different relationship between the state and the individual.
And understanding that foundation, that specific structure, is absolutely crucial for understanding the problems they're facing now.
Precisely. Because when a system like this, one that basically traded political freedom for economic prosperity, starts to falter on the economic side, things get very interesting and often very difficult for ordinary people.
Which brings us right to the core issue today. People not getting paid.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really tangible, because those foundational claims, that implicit social contract we talked about, it's being tested right now, severely tested, by something as basic as people not receiving their wages.
That social contract being, we'll make you richer, you stay out of politics.
Basically, yeah. For about 30 years, that was the core of the CCP's legitimacy. It's often called performance legitimacy. The party delivered incredible economic growth, lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty, and the understanding was, enjoy the benefits, but don't challenge our rule.
And that worked for a long time.
It did. It was the bedrock of stability. But now, with the economy facing serious headwinds, that whole foundation is looking shaky. It's eroding.
So that promise of ever-increasing prosperity is breaking down for a lot of people.
It seems to be under immense strain. The economic challenges are deep and structural. Take GDP growth. The official figure for 2024 was 5%, which, sounds okay on the surface.
Still growth, right?
Still growth, but independent analysts, like the Rhodium Group, they put the actual growth much lower, somewhere between 2.4 and 2.8%.
Wow, that's roughly half the official number.
Exactly. And their forecast for 2025 is only maybe 3 to 4.5%. This consistent gap between the official story and what outside analysts see suggests, well, deeper problems that aren't being fully acknowledged. It creates uncertainty.
What are some of those deeper problems? What's driving this slowdown?
The real estate crisis is probably the biggest, most visible one. Investment in property has just plummeted, down something like 68% since the peak in 2021.
68%. That's a collapse.
It's a massive collapse. And you've got huge developers like Evergrande, Country Garden basically imploding. This isn't just some corporate issue either.
Right, because so many ordinary people have their savings tied up in property.
An enormous amount. Estimates are around 70% of household wealth in China is in real estate.
70%.
Yeah. So when the market crashes, it wipes out people's life savings, their retirement plans. It's catastrophic on a personal level. Imagine seeing most of what you've saved just vanish.
That's terrifying. And I guess this property crash must be hitting local governments really hard, too?
Absolutely. That's the next big piece. Local government debt. They are drowning in hidden debt. Estimates are around 10 trillion RMB. That's like, what, 1.38 trillion US dollars?
How do they rack up so much debt?
A lot of it was through these things called local government financing vehicles, LGFVs, kind of off-book companies that used to fund big infrastructure projects, often relying on selling land to developers to pay it back.
But if the property market tanks, they can't sell the land.
Exactly. The developers aren't buying, the land values fall, and suddenly these local governments have massive debts they can't repay. They're facing a huge fiscal crunch. They struggle to pay their own bills, let alone support the local economy or pay contractors. It's a ticking time bomb.
Okay, so you got Falling property values, wiping out savings, and local governments struggling with debt. How does this affect regular people's confidence, their willingness to spend money?
It tanks it. Consumer confidence is really low, even though the central government is trying to stimulate things, cutting interest rates, pumping money into the system. People are scared.
They're saving instead of spending.
Pretty much. They're hoarding cash, worried about the future, worried about their jobs, worried about their property values. It becomes a vicious cycle, right? People don't spend, so businesses don't sell, so they cut back, maybe lay people off, and confidence drops even further.
And this is where the unpaid wages problem really comes into sharp focus. All these big economic issues, the property crisis, the debt, the low confidence, they trickle down to people just not getting their paychecks.
Exactly. It's the most direct, painful consequence for millions. We're talking about wages people worked hard for. Their blood money, as it's sometimes called. The money they need to feed their families, pay rent, survive.
And it's not just isolated cases, it's widespread.
It seems to be incredibly widespread. Reports are coming from all sorts of sectors. Construction, obviously, is hit hard, but also education, manufacturing, even government departments themselves are delaying or withholding wages. That tells you how deep the fiscal problems go.
Can you give us some concrete examples, like recent ones?
Yeah, looking at data from, say, the second quarter of 2025 in Beijing alone, the city's labor bureau reported several major cases. You had a company called Yonpeng New Energy Tech owing over 600,000 RMB to 24 workers.
Okay.
Kingpu Tongren Tourism Development owed almost 2.5 million RMB to just 15 workers. Think about that per person. Guokai Keek Quantum Tech owed nearly 2.8 million. Hongshengsen Construction owed over 500,000.
These are huge amounts, especially for the workers involved. Is there any punishment for these companies?
Well, they're supposed to be. They get put on this discredited joint punishment list. It's meant to hurt their ability to get loans, government contracts, things like that. A black mark.
Does it work? Do they pay up?
Sometimes, maybe. But reports indicated that even after being listed, companies like Yonpeng and Kingpu still refused to pay, leading to more fines and enforcement attempts that, well, often seem to struggle. And it's not just Beijing. Similar stories from Guangdong, Gansu, all over. Arrears in the hundreds of thousands, even millions. It's systemic.
And the construction industry must be ground zero, given the property crisis.
Absolutely. You see workers from massive state-owned companies like China Railway Construction, China State Construction Engineering Group, resorting to desperate measures.
Like protests.
Yeah, blocking factory gates, using their trucks to block highways. There were cases in Shan and Yunnan. It's what happens when the official channels fail them over and over. They're just trying to get paid for work they've already done.
And it's hitting public sector workers too, teachers, healthcare workers.
Sadly, yes. Teachers in places like Shandong and Shaanxi making maybe around $400 a month, facing 6 months without pay. Imagine that.
Unbelievable.
Healthcare workers in Shanwei occupied hospital lobbies over unpaid salaries and bonuses. Manufacturing workers at a tech company in Guangdong protesting months of unpaid wages, blocking gates. These are essential workers.
This is really hitting a nerve because it even affects the people who are part of the state's control system, right? The stability maintenance people.
This is maybe the most striking part, the sheer paradox of it. In Pushen, Fujian, there was a case involving 700 or 800 grid workers. These are basically the frontline stability maintenance personnel.
What do they do exactly?
They're like the eyes and ears on the ground. They monitor communities, report dissent, resolve small disputes. They're described as the capillaries and nerve endings of the stability system.
Okay, so crucial parts of the control apparatus.
Exactly. And they were owed 6 months' salary, about $300 a month, and their social insurance payments were stopped.
6 months for the stability guys.
Yeah. Apparently, after some outcry, they got paid for 1 month, but the rest was just left hanging, pending.
So the system is prioritizing.
What?
Funding the surveillance tech over paying the people running it.
It looks like a fiscal crunch, stability takes precedence situation, but stability seems to mean funding the machinery of control, the police, the surveillance infrastructure, even if it means shortchanging the low-level personnel who actually do the day-to-day monitoring. It shows the internal contradictions and the financial strain the system is under.
So how is the government responding to all this? The protests, the anger, even from their own people? Are they tackling the wage issue head-on?
Their main focus seems to be on the bigger picture, risk managing that huge local government debt load.
Right.
We've got this massive 12 trillion RMB debt swap plan.
What does that do?
It lets local governments swap their risky hidden debts for more manageable, longer-term bonds. It's about preventing a systemic financial meltdown, de-risking the system.
But it doesn't directly put money in the pockets of unpaid workers.
Not directly, no. It's about financial stability for the state, not immediate relief for individuals owed wages. The overriding priority is stability first.
And how do they maintain stability when people are angry and protesting?
Through control. Sophisticated surveillance, heavy police presence, quick suppression of any protest that looks like it might grow or spread. You see helmeted police deployed immediately at protest sites. It's about managing the symptoms of discontent, not necessarily fixing the root causes.
So the official systems for getting wages paid, like those discredit lists, they're not really solving the problem on the ground.
It seems enforcement is really patchy and difficult. Companies find ways around it. Local officials might look the other way. The legal process is slow. It leads to this constant buildup of grievances. People feel helpless.
It sounds like a pressure cooker. You have widespread economic hardship hitting people directly, and a system that's struggling to respond or is actively suppressing their attempts to get help.
Exactly. And that leads us to think about how people cope psychologically in that kind of environment. The silence.
Right. Because you'd expect, with millions affected, maybe more noise, more widespread, visible anger. But often, there seems to be this quietness. Which brings us to this idea you mentioned earlier, the spiral of silence. What is that exactly?
Yeah, it's a really powerful concept from communication theory, developed by Elizabeth Noel Norman. The basic idea is that people are constantly trying to figure out what the prevailing public opinion is on any given issue.
Like testing the waters.
Exactly. And if they sense that their own opinion is in the minority, or if they think expressing it might lead to social isolation, criticism, or even punishment, they tend to just stay quiet.
Okay, that makes sense. Fear of sticking out.
Right. But then this silence makes the opinion that is being expressed, the perceived majority view, seem even stronger and more widespread than it might actually be, which then encourages more people with dissenting views to stay silent.
So it spirals downwards. Silence breeds more silence.
Precisely. It's a self-reinforcing cycle that can effectively mute alternative viewpoints, even if quite a few people secretly hold them.
And why is this spiral particularly strong, you think, in a place like China, more so than in, say, open democracies?
Because the conditions are almost perfectly set up for it. First, you have controlled public sphere. The state controls the major media outlets, obviously.
Yeah, TV, newspapers.
But crucially, they also heavily censor the internet and social media. Platforms like Weibo, WeChat, they're constantly monitored. Sensitive topics are blocked, posts get deleted, accounts get shut down.
So you don't really get a sense of genuine public debate.
Not on sensitive issues, no. What gets presented as mainstream opinion is often carefully managed, politically engineered. It's not organic. So if you have a different thought, you genuinely might believe you're completely alone or that your view is extremely fringe and dangerous.
Because you just don't see anyone else expressing it.
Exactly. And it's not just about feeling awkward or unpopular. In China, expressing the wrong view carries real political risk. It's not just social ostracization.
What kind of risks?
You could be labeled unpatriotic or a troublemaker or accused of being influenced by hostile foreign forces. And the consequences can be severe.
Yes.
Losing your job, getting kicked out of university, being blocked from travel, or even getting detained or imprisoned.
Wow.
Think about the white paper movement protesters. People holding blank sheets of paper faced serious repercussions. That sends a very powerful message to everyone else. Keep your head down, stay silent. It becomes a rational choice for self-preservation.
It sounds like a climate of fear, really, where silence isn't just agreement, it's often a survival tactic.
Absolutely. And over time, this leads to what some call learned helplessness or learned silence. People aren't quiet because they have nothing to say. They're quiet because they've learned from experience or from seeing what happens to others, that speaking out is likely pointless and definitely risky.
So they only speak up when it becomes absolutely unbearable, when it hits them personally.
Often, yes. People tend to endure a lot quietly. It's only when they are personally directly harmed, when their home is being demolished, when they run out of food during a lockdown, when their healthcare benefits are slashed, or when they literally aren't getting paid for months that the dam breaks for that individual.
Like those Shanghai residents during the lockdown you mentioned.
Exactly. Many initially supported the harsh measures, but when they were starving, then they cried out. Or the white hair movement, retirees protesting healthcare cuts that directly impacted them. Or the unpaid grid workers, they spoke up when their salaries stopped.
So the pattern is Personal harm leads to outcry, but often it feels like it's too late.
Yeah.
Or the outcry is isolated.
It's often too late for collective action to form effectively. By the time you're personally hit, the system has already moved on, or your neighbors are too scared to join you. It reflects this feeling of systemic disillusionment, like, I played by the rules, I kept quiet, and the system still failed me.
And this ties into another aspect, doesn't it? This kind of social apathy, the as long as it's not me attitude.
Yes, that's a huge part of it. The collective repression creates deep distrust. People are wary of each other. Is my neighbor an informant? Will my colleague report me if I complain?
That must be incredibly isolating.
It is. It atomizes society. It breaks down the social trust needed for solidarity and collective action. Why risk sticking your neck out for someone else when you don't trust them and when you fear you'll be punished for it?
And does the official narrative contribute to this?
Definitely. The constant message is sacrifice the individual for the greater good, the nation comes first, obey the party. It can lead to a kind of moral numbness. You become desensitized to the suffering of others because you're told it's necessary, or maybe even their own fault for not conforming.
Plus, maybe people just feel powerless. Like, what difference can I make anyway?
Exactly. A profound feeling of insignificance. My words won't change anything. Why bother? It's too risky. This reflects that atomized social structure and the overwhelming power imbalance. You feel like a tiny cog in a giant machine.
So all this silence, this apathy, it actually contributes to the appearance of stability, doesn't it? Even if it's built on fear.
That's the paradox. The regime can point to the lack of widespread protest as evidence of support or contentment, but it's a stability built on fear, distrust, and enforced silence. It's incredibly fragile.
You mentioned that Chinese saying.
Yeah, it's not that I don't resist, it's that it's not my turn yet. It perfectly captures that feeling of hoping the trouble passes you by, while knowing deep down it could hit you next. And the tragedy is, when it is your turn, others are likely thinking the same thing about you.
It's a chilling thought. How can a spiral like that ever reverse? What could possibly make people break the silence together?
It's incredibly difficult, but not impossible. Sometimes it takes icebreakers, a few courageous individuals who take the first incredibly risky step, like that first student with the blank paper. Their bravery can inspire others, show them they aren't alone.
So one person can make a difference, potentially.
Potentially by sparking something. Another factor is when people suddenly realize the silent majority is much larger than they thought. Maybe through an event or an online discussion that slips past the censors for a while, they see that lots of people share their discontent. That feeling of shared grievance can be powerful.
Finding connection despite the controls.
Right. And sometimes new platforms or anonymous channels can briefly open up spaces for that. Things like Telegram or Clubhouse for a short time allowed people to gauge real sentiment more freely, reducing that sense of isolation.
But the overall situation seems dangerous, this disconnect between the enforced silence and the potential underlying anger.
Extremely dangerous. The leadership might misread the silence as genuine consent and push policies that are even more out of touch or repressive. That just builds the pressure further. When it eventually erupts, like it did in Eastern Europe or even with the white paper movement, it can be sudden and unpredictable.
Because it's pressure building under the surface, not real stability.
Exactly. As Noel Neumann warned, when silence comes from fear, not agreement, society isn't stable. It's just waiting for a trigger.
Okay, so we have this backdrop of economic hardship, people not getting paid, and this pervasive silence born out of fear and control. But you also mentioned something else bubbling up, especially outside the mainland, this counter slogan. No Communist Party, then New China. That sounds like a direct challenge.
Oh, it's a huge challenge. A direct, powerful inversion of one of the CCP's most fundamental propaganda slogans.
What's the original slogan?
The original, drilled into people for decades, is, without the Communist Party, there would be no New China. Meigan Qingjin Jiangnin Zhongguo.
Okay.
It's designed to fuse the party and the nation completely, to make them inseparable in people's minds. The message is, the CCP is China's savior, its creator, its essence. Therefore, being against the party means you're against China itself. It's treasonous, unpatriotic.
A very powerful framing device.
Extremely. It equates party survival with national survival. But now, this reverse slogan, no Communist Party, then there will be New China, is gaining traction among dissidents, overseas Chinese, people online who manage to get around the firewall.
What's driving this reversal? Why is it resonating now?
Well, firstly, it's a conscious effort to break that identity bind. People are saying, wait a minute, we love China, our culture, our history, but we don't equate that with the Communist Party that currently rules it.
Separating the party from the nation.
Exactly. They're arguing the party has hijacked China. This feeling got much stronger after things like the crackdown in Hong Kong, the white paper movement, the constant threats towards Taiwan. People are reclaiming the idea of China from the party's grip.
And this involves looking at history differently, too.
Absolutely. It involves a significant historical reevaluation, challenging the CCP's narrative that they were the only path to a modern China. Scholars and commentators outside China point to the Republic of China era before 1949. They argue there were already efforts towards modernization, towards building democratic institutions like Sun Yat-sen's ideas. They suggest maybe China could have found a different path, a less authoritarian one, if the CCP hadn't won the Civil War.
And they point to examples like Taiwan.
Precisely. Taiwan, South Korea. These places show that you can have economic development, modernization, and democratic governance without a communist party. Taiwan is the most direct counterexample right there, a flourishing Chinese democracy. It undermines the CCP's claim of inevitability.
What about the economy? The CCP takes all the credit for China's rise.
That's another key part of the counter-narrative, reattributing the economic success. Critics argue the boom years after Mao weren't thanks to communism, but thanks to moving away from Maoist policies.
By introducing market reforms, opening up.
Exactly. By adopting elements of capitalism, encouraging private enterprise, joining the global economy, the argument is that China's success happened despite the party's interference, not because of it, and that without the political campaigns, the state control, China could have become prosperous and free much earlier.
So the party is seen as having held China back, not lifted it up.
By this view, yes, for decades. And now, the current crises are seen as further proof that the party's model is flawed and maybe even detrimental.
How do the current problems feed into this?
Well, take the real estate bubble. People see it as a direct result of party policies, local government incentives, and cronyism, not just a market fluctuation. Or the state-led industrial policies that sometimes stifle real innovation. Or the human rights abuses showing the dangers of unchecked power. Or the aggressive wolf warrior diplomacy that isolates China internationally.
So people look at all this and think, the party is the problem, not the solution.
That's the conclusion more and more people are drawing, especially outside the firewall. They see the CCP as the biggest obstacle now to China, realizing its true potential becoming not just wealthy, but also free, respected, and stable in a genuine way.
So how does this sentiment actually get expressed given the censorship and risks?
Outside the mainland, and sometimes filtering back in, it takes many forms. You see a lot of clever online slang and memes. Things like, without the Communist Party, the earth would still turn. Sarcastic jabs. Or calling the CCP China's biggest opposition party. Or that image you liked. If China is a dragon, the CCP is the chain holding it back.
Memes as resistance.
Yeah, they're shareable, often funny, and can bypass censors, at least for a while. Then you have more formal critiques in publications and academia from exiled scholars arguing the party-state system is incompatible with Chinese civilization or traditional values. Works like the 9 Commentaries on the Communist Party make that case forcefully.
And in public discourse, maybe films or commentary.
Right. Official propaganda films often get mocked or parodied online outside China. It creates this anti-enthusiasm. And many overseas Chinese commentators on YouTube and other platforms explicitly use the slogan, "No Communist Party, then New China," as a kind of rallying cry. It symbolizes this hope for a different future.
It's clearly a powerful idea. Why does the CCP react so strongly against this specific phrase? Why suppress it so aggressively?
Because it strikes at the absolute heart of their legitimacy. It directly attacks their core claim, we are China, China needs us. If people start to believe that's not true, the whole edifice crumbles.
They create that cognitive disconnect you mentioned.
Exactly. If people widely accept that you can separate the party from the nation, that China could exist, maybe even be better off without the CCP, that is the single most dangerous thought for the leadership. It's an ideological decoupling they cannot allow.
Because it opens the door to imagining a future without them.
A future where they are not only unnecessary, but potentially harmful. And that's an existential threat to their monopoly on power. They have to crush that idea.
Wow. It really highlights the power of words, doesn't it? Just flipping a familiar slogan creates this massive political statement, this historical challenge, this outlet for frustration. It's a symbol of defiance.
So if we try and tie all these threads together, the unpaid wages hitting people's daily lives, the fear and silence gripping society, and then this defiant counter-narrative emerging, it all points to the same thing, really, a serious challenge to the CCP's legitimacy.
Which was built so heavily on delivering economic growth and stability.
Exactly. That performance legitimacy is weakening. You see it in the real estate crisis, the local debt, the low confidence. People aren't feeling the promise anymore.
And the unpaid wages are the most brutal, direct evidence of that breakdown, even hitting the stability workers themselves.
Right, which fuels protests, even if they're quickly suppressed. And meanwhile, that spiral of silence keeps things looking calm on the surface, but it's a stability built on fear and distrust, not genuine support. People are quiet until they're personally hurt.
Often too late to help each other.
Yeah, and into that environment comes this idea, no communist party, then new China. It questions the entire foundation, suggesting a different path is possible.
So for you listening, what does this all mean? It really shows how tangled up economics, social control, and national identity can get, doesn't it? Especially in a system like China's.
It's not abstract. It's about people's livelihoods, their trust in the system, their hopes for the future. Are they just going to get paid? Can they speak freely? Is this the only way?
Which leads to a final thought, maybe something to ponder.
Yeah, think about this. In a society where telling the truth is risky, where silence becomes the default way to cope, what happens when the economic pain gets so widespread, so personal, that it starts eating away at that silence itself?
Could that, as long as it's not me, feeling finally break down?
Could it shift to a collective realization that, actually, it is all of us? When the personal pain becomes a shared experience for millions, what happens then? That's the big unknown, the pressure point these systems always face eventually.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for walking us through all that complexity. It's really given me a lot to consider.
Me too. Important stuff.
And that wraps up our Sip and Talk for today. Hope you found that as, as fascinating and maybe a bit sobering as I did. Definitely hit that subscribe button for Sip and Talk wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss our next conversation.
Yeah, please do. And hey, while you're clicking around, you could absolutely check out our friend Micky's YouTube channel, Micky to Life.
Oh yeah, Micky.
He does great stuff. Memes, music, wine tasting sometimes, travel vlogs. Actually, I'm still waiting for the final episode of his trip to Cheongju in Korea. The title said they had a fight.
Did it really?
It did. Joe, did you not subscribe to his member content? Shame on you.
Laughing. Hey, sorry, Micky. You know, budget constraints. Got to allocate the podcast funds carefully.
Excuses.
But seriously, check Micky out. Micky to Life on YouTube. Good stuff.
Definitely.
All right, from both of us here at Sip and Talk, thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.